There we go.
I'll be
Rod was
drinking my
drinking coffee. Right. Welcome back to Red Hot Talk, episode 73. Believe me or not, we're closing up to 100 now. And can't believe we're going to have a celebration. We're going to have some bubbly ready for that one. And maybe we can do some giveaway. Maybe we can do that. Let's see. And but anyway, today's topic is going to be interesting. I hope that it will resonate to some of you, if not all of you, because we all buy cameras, we all buy new lenses, and today's topic is about upgrades, right? Whether you should upgrade to the latest and the greatest, but that depends on what you have currently. So let's have a little bit of a discussions about that. So the reason I set up today's topic is because I have seen so many comments, so many feedbacks in the last couple of camera releases, from all kinds of brands, right? Not just about Olympus systems, Sony, whatever, is everybody. And they all have this similar sort of kind of response to the new camera releases. Oh, this camera doesn't look that much better than the old one. Oh, the spec doesn't seem to have changed that much. Oh, is it the same sensor? Is it the same resolution? So all of these common things is popping up everywhere on the internet. And that prompted me to to do today's talk, just to talk about it. And I had, obviously reasons to why I said it, skip it. And let's talk a little bit about that. So Rod, you and I both, buying cameras for a long time, or buying and selling cameras for a long time.
Yeah.
And we, I guess, apart from that, we being photographers, but also at the same time, we can be a little bit nerdy, trying to figure out or trying to experience some of the newer tech and newer things, and it's all part of the curiosity, and as well as just being nerdy and thinking about, okay, how does the new AI subject recognition work? How's the new ISO sensitivity going to work for my images? Blah blah blah. Right. So
yeah,
can we all agree on this, Rod? Is that for the last few years the advancement is very, very little?
It is, but I think I'm going to have to say something to defend the camera makers. It's going to be the only time this afternoon I say anything to defend camera makers, probably.
Yep.
But I will say this, is that when a camera maker launches a new model, we immediately imagine they're trying to convince people who have the previous one, they have to get the new one. It's not quite that straightforward. Actually, what they're doing is making sure that camera in that position in their range is up to date. So, for example, when Nikon launched the Z50 Mark II, everyone said, well, it's so much like the Mark I. That's fine. Nikon didn't expect you to sell you Mark I to get the Mark II. This is simply to make the Z50 stay current. So it's probably not fair to imagine they're trying to get people who bought the last camera to buy the new one, because much of the marketing will be aimed at completely new users. So they're not all bad. But I agree with you. If you're going to launch something like the Z52, why bother?
Yeah.
Unless it's a big leap.
Yes.
Even if it's to a completely new user. If all you're doing is just doing a couple of tweaks here and there to make it a bit more modern in 2025, it's 2024 when it's launched, wasn't it? If all you're doing is a few little tweaks, I guess it's still a fair question. Is that really enough?
Yeah.
Is it like marketing leading the product rather than the product leading the marketing?
That's an interesting point, because obviously that's another point that was raised by some of the feedback that I read. Is about marketing and about profit generating for the company. I guess don't get me wrong, companies to have profit to continue and to continue to do the R&D and so forth. So they do need to do. They need to make money. So as simple as that. I would like to hear from all of you as well. Of course, your upgrading journeys, and whether you always like to you are always that kind of photographer who like to just get whatever is latest coming out, or you do skip a few generations and then buy a new camera every, let's say, 5 to 6 years. obviously I'm speaking from a general point of view. Of course, if you're professional, if you use your cameras a lot, you know, you know, like rack up to about 100,000 clicks a year, those would be a slightly different story because the camera will wear out anyway. So you're most likely going to upgrade 1.5 years or 2 years time. You can, you know, that's the maximum lifespan for a professional camera. It's only really for reliability kind of thinking. It's not so much about whether it's capable or not, because, you know, the shutter will wear out at some point, and then they just simply just get a new one. So they save a lot of hassles when it comes to fixings and repairing. Yeah, that would be good to hear from you guys and what your experience on upgrading.
Yeah, and also whether you've invested in any upgrades that you regret or didn't seem worth it. I started writing a list of my own experiences about 8 o'clock this morning. Haven't quite finished it yet, but I think we've all been in that position where we've upgraded. Yeah, we've got the new camera. Yeah. When you sit down and look at it in the cold light today, you think, how much further has it got me? So I've had a few of those. I think probably a few people have had that experience, but I suspect your argument might be, Jimmy, that you shouldn't upgrade every year or every generation, but maybe plan it so it's every couple. And I think you've got something there.
Yes, absolutely. Because you know, like use Olympus as an example. Obviously, being an ambassador, I had the luxury to try out all the cameras with me, and I have some, you know, almost all of them actually since about OM5 or EM5 Mark II time. But all I could say is, yes, every new camera is better than the previous one. That's without a doubt. But how much better? You know, that's the big question, right? Yeah. And I would say, you know, sorry, Rob. Yep.
And how much better for you specifically? Never mind what YouTubers say or what the specs list says or what a kind of a feature comparison says. For the things that you personally need, how much better is it going to be? Yes,
and I think that's the big question is you as a photographer, you know, whether you think the latest advancement in whatever area that they marketed the camera for works for you. You know, if you think that the extra 10 frames per second will help you hit the bird flying, catching the fly in the air kind of thing. If it works for you, you know, that's a $1 million question, right? If it works for you, yeah, go ahead. You know, that probably will help you get that shot. But then again, you know, there most of us, or 90% of the photographer who just simply capturing kids running around or you know, just going traveling, do some landscape, general landscape. I think for those people, for those photographers, and you know, the new generation cameras may not necessarily work for you. I think that if you do skip 2 to 3 generations, you will actually see the difference. The differences in between generations are very, very tiny these days. We are already gone past the stage when they bumping up resolution like every 2 years, and we don't see that anymore. We're practically seeing the same resolutions, you know, hovering between of a different range of cameras, of course, but the general range is between 25 to 30 megapixel. These sort of camera kind of remain the same resolution for the past 5 years, and you have the high resolution bunch, which is 40 plus resolutions camera. They also kind of hovering around the same point as well. They haven't really gone past that anymore. Like, you know, full frame cameras, remember that the days when they're jumping from 12 to 24 to 30 to 50 to, you know, that leap was every 2 years.
It was very exciting.
Yeah, it was very exciting. The numbers doubling, right? But we don't see that now. You know, it's kind of plateau, isn't it? Everything just kind of stopped now, and you don't see like 100 megapixel full frame, you know, sensors. You know, and you just don't see that. Although theoretically they exist. You know, if you look at the Sony sensor catalog, they do exist. You know, if you look at Canon's R&D departments, you know, you probably see them flying around talk about 100, 120 megapixel full frame cameras, but we're not having it.
I think one of the things that's happening is that things that some people want are getting in the way of things that other people want. Yeah. So I can imagine it's not particularly difficult to develop a 100 megapixel full frame camera, but the readout speeds would be rubbish for video and continuous shooting, and also you get a horrible rolling shot of a video. So the video users are at least as vocal as the
Yeah.
stills photographers. So at the moment, video shooters will get their way. So
Yep.
we'll get sensors that work well for video, not
Yep.
sensors designed for resolution.
Yep.
That's the curse of hybrid cameras, isn't it?
It is,
Whoever
yes.
shouts loudest determines what they are.
And to be honest, I mean that also impacted on cost as well. You think about rolling shutter is a very big example, and obviously it will impact those photographers use electronic shutter or silent mode, because they are basically using the sensor to scan images when you take the photograph. So if you do panning a lot, do the sports photography, for instance, or fast action shots using electronic shutter, a slow sensor will result in the jello effects, basically similar as rolling shutter. You see the line kind of go swirly, left and right is kind of horrible. So that you probably would need to have the fastest and the better sensors. But for most of us still using mechanical shutters, I'm pretty sure probably 80% of us still kind of do that. I will stick with that, and you shouldn't have a problem with sort of any sensor, to be quite honest, in regards to rolling shutter. But video, yes. And that's why we have these BSI stack sensors, these ultra fast sensors coming up now, global shutters, whatever, in anything like that, is to help with the rolling shutters, so everything's scanned simultaneously or very fast, and you don't get that effects. And that means that you can safely use on video when you're panning or in photos in electronic mode.
I think as well, we seem to have stopped at 24 megapixels for the most part. And that's because anything higher makes video quite difficult, because you've got to oversample higher resolutions down to 4K or 6K, which is a very big processing overhead. A higher resolution sensor is worse for video than, say, a 24 megapixel one. So I think our excitement about megapixels has kind of disappeared, because those sensors aren't really ideal for hybrid use. Can I just jump in and answer a question from Anthony, because this is my specialist subject?
I bring that up. Yes, there you go.
Which RAW developer do you recommend for OM system files, Adobe or DxO? DxO's processing of OM RAW files is substantially better. Sharper, less noise, better lens corrections. If you put a processed DxO image alongside a Lightroom version, I think you might be quite surprised by how kind of gritty and weak the Adobe version is. It's not very kind to Micro Four Thirds RAW files.
No.
That being said, Capture One, expensive, but it also much better for OM files than Lightroom. If you do want to carry on using Lightroom, which I can understand because it's the easiest, most efficient, most versatile solution for almost everyone, I would say you can use Pure RAW from within it for images that need the extra touch, or you can batch process your RAW files into DNG files with Pure RAW, then bring them into Lightroom.
Yeah.
The only problem with that is the files are anywhere from 2 to 4 times larger. It takes a lot of space. So you might want to just export the ones where you need the extra noise reduction and detail. But DxO, I would say, is best. Capture One is on the same level, not quite as good as DxO with Deep Prime and the AI noise reduction, but it works directly on RAW files, so you don't have to go through this AI denoising malarkey. So I think for practicality, I would say Capture One, but it's expensive.
Yeah.
So it's difficult. Otherwise, use Adobe Lightroom, use Lightroom's own enhance feature, which is quite good.
Yeah.
Or DxO's plugin, which is even better. But watch out for those big files.
Absolutely. Well, for those who who are in the UK, you may actually recall, I think 2 years ago, OM System did actually make an offer that you actually get a free Capture One license when you buy the OM1. Yeah, so
Really?
that was a couple of years. That was worth it, you know. And they know
Yeah.
Capture One, obviously, you know, the real the reasons that they want to throw in Capture One, but not Adobe or any other software is because it works very well with home system files.
Yeah, Lightroom is not very kind to small sensors at all.
Yeah.
It tends to exaggerate noise and doesn't really give you any extra. It gives you a little less detail, in my experience.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
So that's my 2 pence. But don't rule out Capture One. It's very expensive, but it's a very good bit of software. It's got a bit of
Yeah.
class to it too. So
Ooh, that's the word, class.
well, it's very good with colors.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's got very powerful and controllable and effective color adjustments. Whereas a
Well,
lot of Lightroom's adjustments are like a sledgehammer approach.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I can echo that as well. But my workflow is Lightroom. You know, I have so many things with Lightroom.
Of course.
So I do use Pure Raw to denoise, demosaic the Micro Four Thirds file and bring it back in. But I don't do like transfer everything into DNG and bring it back in. So I cull the images first. I'll just process the one that I need, because otherwise, you know, like Rod said, the files are huge, and also the whole process can be quite lengthy depending on what computer you use as well. So if you don't have the latest, let's say, latest generation of the processor, computer processor, you may be struggling to do batch processing, because you may have to literally dump the files in there and come back the next day. You know, some of them can be that long.
Well, I think I've got a fairly new Mac Studio, and that chews over each raw file for anywhere from 5 to 10 seconds.
Yep.
So if you've got a few hundred to do, it's a long old job. And because the files are so big, I think in the long term you might have to put up with keeping them on an external hard drive and putting up with the slower access speed.
Yes.
Because SSD storage is still expensive.
Yes.
But anyway, getting too far down the rabbit hole, aren't we?
But you know, it's good to mention software, because we could. You know, although we're talking about upgrading cameras, but equally about software. So we can talk a little bit about software upgrades probably a little bit later into this chat.
Okay, yeah.
And I also see some other comments as well, which we can actually bring it in. And I think, let's see. David, good day, Jimmy, and Rod from Alberta, Canada. Wow. Okay. Hello.
Well, thanks for joining us.
Yes, I buy gear that fits for purpose and only upgrade when my current gear is no longer capable. And that's an interesting way of saying it, no longer capable. You know, I like how you said it, but at the same time, I would say, you know, when you say capable, because you bought the camera, obviously it's fit for purpose at the time when you bought it. And, you know, to me, all my cameras, including the ones that I bought 15 years ago, are still capable. But I think that they may not be as good quality or fast or as accurate in certain ways, or certain kind of shooting styles, as the modern cameras, because of the advancements of the AF algorithm, for instance. They may be better built or something, or unless you're suggesting the camera literally break down and no longer works.
I imagine he means this in the way I would put it, which is that when you get to the point where your camera is holding you back on not doing the things you need it to do. So that would encompass an older camera where you might say, well, look, 20 megapixels is no longer enough for my agency. That
yes,
needs to be fixed.
that's my game, right?
Or,
yes.
Yeah. Or sorry, I stole your line there, Jimmy. Sorry. or let's say you mentioned image quality. If you're starting to find that your older camera can no longer deliver the quality you need, whether it's because you shoot now in low light indoor scenarios or whatever, or its autofocus can't keep up with the subjects you need to shoot, that's when you upgrade. But not everyone is in that position, and quite often an older camera can be very effective at what you yourself need to do. Very often newer models are very effective at things that other people need to do, but you don't.
Absolutely, makes sense.
But I was thinking about this whole product cycle business. I don't know if anyone has ever used the original Sony A6000. The little APS-C mirrorless A6000 launched in 2014. So that's been replaced by a whole succession of new and improved models. But I would suggest if you just want a pocket-sized camera that shoots good quality 24 megapixel stills,
Yeah.
none of the replacements have actually taken it any further in that direction. And you could say that Sony needed to keep bringing out new models to keep selling cameras. But then you wonder, couldn't they keep on making the old A6000 for less and less money? Because the more you make, the less it costs you to make them. Yep. Isn't that another kind of economic model? Like maybe that's the one being used by Ricoh with the GR.
I haven't really seen the top price come down though.
No, there is that. But it's another way. It's another way to make camera manufacture profitable.
Yeah.
Just keep making the same one.
Yeah.
But that's not what the market demands. I know that. Yeah.
No, and I think now we're seeing more people joining now. So yes, just a reminder, and if we're talking about upgrading cameras today, so we would like to hear some of your experiences when it comes to upgrading cameras. Do you upgrade to the latest and the greatest, or you skip a few generations, or you basically what David said, wait until you think the camera's no longer suits his needs, and then you buy better cameras for better succession rates and things like that. So we'd like to hear from you. We've got Mike here, and I like to Nikon Nikon to make a mirrorless camera with D810 type sensor, 33 megapixel and 14-bit RAW. Don't they have one already, Nikon?
No, they're not with that. Not with the D800 series. It's 36 megapixel, I think, full frame. Yep. They made the D800, D800E, then the D810, then the D850 jumped to 47 megapixels. Right. I think it's quite a good sensor. Yeah. But it's not great at higher ISO. So I've got a D800, which is fine until you start ramping up the ISO. But that is, that's a factor of its age. But if you put the camera on a tripod, you don't use higher ISOs.
No.
It's
then again, really depending on the type of use, right? And then if you are a paparazzi type of photographer, you don't use tripod, you use running gun, and you just shoot in any type of lighting condition, there will be a point that you really have to bump up the ISO and shoot something really, really dark, and then that's when you're starting to see the images crumbles. But then again, if you're a landscape, yes, probably, you don't even need high ISO. Most of the time you will probably try to get the best quality possible, better dynamic range by shooting low ISO.
Well, I think if you're into astrophotography, then you do need the ISO performance because you need to keep the exposures quite short. But if you're a travel photographer photographing cities at night, people might say, "Oh, you need high ISO as well." Not if you use a tripod. Yeah, and that style of photography often involves light trails, moving clouds, and everything else associated with long exposures. So,
well, which is actually what David responded to you. A lot of low light aurora.
Yes, yeah.
Right.
ISO 6400 and above. This high ISO performance has been a slow and important revolution over the past few years. We now take it for granted I've got a Canon EOS R8, which isn't a very expensive camera, but it's all right at ISO 12,800. Now, 5 years ago, that would have been unimaginable. No. So there is steady improvement in that aspect. Yeah.
My old Canon 5D Mark 1, 1600 was the top, extended with 3200.
Yeah.
When you hear 12,800, so oh my god, what is that?
That's insane.
And now we got 1 million ISO, which is crazy.
But it's easy though, isn't it, to fall in love with the numbers?
Yes.
You just want more and more and more. But I think you have to be realistic about what you actually find in practice that you use. Yeah. Because I tend to do a lot of handheld photography of quite dimly lit historic interiors. Yeah. And you imagine that the ISOs are going to go through the roof. Well, not really, because if you've got a reasonably fast lens, a good image stabilization, not usually going much above 1600, maybe 6400 in a very dark room. So it's you don't have to go absolutely stratospheric with every single number.
Yeah. Right. Angela Play for One has an interesting question. I think that's why Sony has an alpha line photography base and FX line video base. In the features, but both lines use different sensors. I think the alpha line is kind of both in most cases nowadays, and they both can shoot pretty good, decent videos. But the FX obviously is more focused, more video focused.
I'm fairly cynical about that. I'm afraid I don't want to offend any Sony users. I would say the alphas are definitely now hybrids, and the FX line is for people who aren't interested in stills.
Yeah,
and think that the hybrid alphas just don't go quite far enough with the cinema lines. I think the days are long gone when Sony ever made a photographer's camera. You could argue that the A7R5 is, but I don't know how much longer Sony will persist with that line.
That's an interesting insight.
All the rest are hybrids. All the rest are hybrids.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, probably most of you who are listening right now are photographers, and many of you I know have expressed before you don't really care about video features at all. And I think to a certain extent, they should actually continue a more photography focused lines. I'm talking about all camera brands in general. And then hybrid, we talked about it many times, right? I don't think hybrid, the market actually exists. I just don't think there should be hybrid cameras at all. There should be photography cameras or video cameras, and you can't do both at the same time. That's a start.
No, you can't. No.
That's a start. You can't do both at the same time, and then so you either do video or you do photos, right? It's not something that I personally think is feasible. Prove me wrong if you can do both at the same time, and that is great for you. And but me, I've been doing this for many years now, and I just can't seem to work out a method that I can do video and photos at the same time.
Well, I see Chuck L has made a very good point as usual. Yep. He says when it comes to EM13, I intend to upgrade from one body to two. Yep. Exactly. So looking at my kit, I'm looking at my EOS R8, which is a kind of plasticky camera with no IBIS, and thinking, should I upgrade to the EOS R6 Mark II, which is better made, better ergonomics, and has IBIS. But then I'm thinking, well, do you know what? Wouldn't it be better for me and what I do just to get another EOS R8? They're cheap enough now. And then I've got two cameras, one for stills, one for video, or one with one lens and one with another lens. And even though changing lenses is not a chore, by the time you've done it half a dozen times in the space of an hour, you do wish you had two cameras.
Yes.
So that is an interesting upgrade proposition. Get a second body, don't get a better camera. Get another one of what you've already got. It's a good upgrade.
It is. I mean, and I think that there are many options out there now. I mean, when it comes to upgrading, I think people may kind of presume that when we say upgrading is to a new camera, but at the same time you can also upgrade to a used camera, which is better spec. Just depending on what sort of cameras you have currently, and if you want. If your pure needs is high resolutions, I mean, there are plenty of used high resolution cameras for a fraction of the new price. So you don't necessarily need to get the latest gear, and there are very, because of how many people upgrading nowadays, and so many of the cameras are not really that used, compared to the old days, so a lot of the cameras that you buy in second-hand market now, they only have like a few dozen clicks, like they're practically new cameras, and most of them are, I would say as new conditions, they're boxed and everything like that, and you can pick it up for 40% of the price, if they're a couple of years old, so they're actually quite good value for money, and so there are other things and then just thinking about buying the new thing that has come out from the marketing campaign, you know, and or people online are talking about at the moment.
I think sometimes as well you realise what you need is not necessarily an upgrade, but a side grade. You thought you were getting the camera you need, but it turns out that there's another one you should have got. It might be just as old. That would have been better with hindsight than the one you bought. So again, that's another reason to consider used cameras. Cameras don't have to be newer to be better for what you need. Sometimes the camera is already out there. You just didn't quite get the right one.
I mean, like your like your Nikon, right? You know, it's actually practically good camera, and that's a really good camera.
Yeah. But it's unfashionable. Unfashionable cameras are cheap.
All right, you know, if you compare to like the Fujifilm cameras, like the X100, yes.
don't even think about it. Don't even think about it. You wanna buy the stuff that nobody wants.
Yeah, it's
just as good. It's just not fashionable.
It's a good word, fashionable. You know, like, how many of you buy cameras for fashion? You know, for a showcase.
Well, it's difficult, isn't it? Because some of us now are involved in an industry where what you shoot with is important. In the old days of professional photography, it didn't matter. Now it's becoming part of what you do and your own personal brand.
It is.
For that reason, you do often have to choose a camera, not that you think is right, but looks right.
Absolutely. I mean, I know it sounded wrong but I can give you a couple of real life examples about what Rod just said. I don't know how many of you actually follow me since the beginning of this channel. Tracy, who video some of the videos for me at the time, she used to work for a company in Hong Kong who do a lot of high-end weddings. So all the affluent people, you know, so they go to exotic venues and things like that. And the company that she worked for originally used Nikon cameras. So they have a whole bunch of Nikon cameras. They're professional, big, you know, like all the prime lenses, all the top-end professional glass. And but as time moves more and more to the last 15 years, I would say, the boss of the company order a bunch of Leica cameras and give it to each of their, you know, photographers and videographers to hang it around their neck, not to use it, but just to hang around their neck, because they're in that environment where millionaires are all over the place. They want to see that you are using something expensive, you fit into the environment, and you get more business from it. And he was right. And actually, he got more bookings because of that reasons. It's a little bit like marketing in a way, about you wearing a piece of jewelry that fits into that environment. And your
customers have expectations.
Yes, it's kind of bad to say that, you know, because like ultimately, you know, pictures says everything, right? You know, you're supposed to be looking at the pictures, looking at the photographer's style and the creativity out of it. But unfortunately, you know, in some worlds, not all of it, but, you know, some worlds are like that. You know, you just have to have the right presentation. Let's put it that way. Have the right presentation, the right appearance.
The right image.
Yeah, the right image to appease your clients. And then that was really it.
So I'm thinking of my friend Paul Reifer, who does a lot of work with Phase 1 and Capture 1. He, I haven't caught up with him for a little while, but he does very exclusive overseas trips for small parties.
Yep.
And the kit he takes along is extremely expensive. It's basically things like Phase 1 XTs.
Yeah,
which are, you know, they're around 30, 40, 50 grand.
Yeah,
with just one or two lenses. But that's what it needs to be to fit in with this kind of millionaire lifestyle that people expect. If you turned up with a Nikon or a Canon or a Sony, people would think, I paid all this money and this guy's turned up with that. You know.
Yes.
So it's like the Leica thing all over again. It's all part of the product and image you're trying to sell.
Yeah.
Most of us aren't faced with that, but it is a thing. And
it is.
We might think it's silly, but it does matter. The customer's always right.
The customer's always right. But if you work for yourself, if you are only, a photographer who just do things for yourself and not for others, then who cares, right? Then you can buy whatever gear you want.
If you're a social or event photographer and you want to double your fees, it'll be a lot easier if you roll up with a Hasselblad or a Leica.
Yes.
So it's all part of the image, isn't it?
I guess that means that I have to go back to Leica now, so I can double my charges now.
No, you just get a rolled Leica down off the shelf and put it around your neck.
Right, it's time to invest in a Q3 then.
Well, I think it's got to be an M. It's got to be like around.
Well, I have an M, but it's an older M, so.
That's even better. Even better if it's analog.
I do have an analog too. Right, I should start wearing it around my neck then.
It'll just reassure people who are paying a great deal of money.
Yep.
That it's appropriate.
Aren't we all snobbery about this sort of thing nowadays?
I think it's a bit. I do think it's a bit more complicated. I think if you pay a lot for a wedding car,
yep,
you don't expect some American stretch limo. You expect like a pristine white silver ghost or something like that. The image has to match what you're charging, basically.
Yes. But funny enough, another story. I know we're sidetracking a little bit, but then there were, I think 10 years ago, I shot that was when I still photographed weddings, and I did a very high-end wedding for one of the CEOs in the country. So it's a very exclusive venue, and I turned up with my Leica. So I had the Leica, I had the right camera.
Right.
But guess what? Everyone was a little bit shocked, and they actually complained secretly to the bride because she hired me. She was the one who hired me. And why did you hire an amateur photographer who used a compact camera? No one knew I was using a Leica.
That's awkward.
So I thought I turned up with the right camera, right? And
well,
and
then you just have to have two around your neck, don't you?
Yeah.
You have to have your Leica, and make sure everybody sees the brand.
Yep.
And you have to have some monster,
big massive one.
big massive camera, ideally with an integrated grip. And a 70 to 200 f2.8, because that's standard wedding photography gear. Is just have both of those around your neck. You don't have to shoot with them. Just look as if you might.
So that was a true story, but luckily the bride did defend me, first of all, there are two things she was talking to the bridesmaids, there are two things you made it wrong. He wasn't an amateur. He's actually a very known photographer in the UK.
Yes.
He was using a 10,000 pound Leica camera. So it's not a compact, it's not a cheap compact camera. And second, I like his photos. That's what matters. And I think the second line really made my day. That was really good. Yeah. So she knew her stuff.
Stuck up for you.
Yeah, they did. Good. They did. So that was okay. All right, I can continue. Right. Okay. I just want to answer one quick question from Anthony. And so DJI just brought out a new drone, the Mavic 4, I believe that you were talking about. And with the new 100 megapixel micro four third sensor, I'm not sure how good the low light capabilities are with this new sensor. Right. I'm not sure how many of you have read up about this new drone from DJI, and the sensor that they use in the new Mavic 4 isn't actually a 100 megapixel sensor. It's actually, well, people are speculating, but it's a similar type of sensor that Lumix GX7 is using. So it's actually a 25 megapixel quad Bayer sensor that basically can take up to 100 megapixel stills. So that's the sensor they're talking about.
They're playing that game, are they? They're playing
yes.
that game. It seems to remember they did that with the Pocket 2, saying it could shoot 64 megapixel stills.
So that
it's
yeah,
a 16
it's
megapixel sensor.
it's essentially yes, it's doing this magic thing behind numbers. So it's actually a 25 megapixel stills camera, because to take 100 megapixel stills you have to enable a mode in the drone menu, so it's a little bit like high res mode that you set on the camera. So it's doing its thing. So basically you are taking in normal mode, you're taking 25 megapixel stills. That's why everyone's suspecting that is actually a Lumix sensor, or at least something similar to that sensor.
So do you think it's like a high res shot from multiple, because that's great for a drone because they're very good at staying still.
Yes.
So that should work out pretty well.
Yes, and obviously because of that sensor, it can do quite a bit. The Lumix camera does a dual bay ISOs and things like that to capture the highlight and the shadow area, so it should get a quite good dynamic range out of it. That's mainly for video, really for videos. So which is what the drone majority of the time is doing. Is most of them will be video aerial footage. But yes, for those aerial photographers, I think is a pretty good sensor. I have the Mavic 3, which is the older generation 20 megapixel sensor, but for me it's still really, really good, and I like using that drone to take photos in the air. So far I just don't think that I needed to upgrade. That's another thing that we talk about today. So I'll probably skip the Mavic 4, and I might wait until the Mavic 5 whenever that comes out in 4 or 5 years times, and unless they have something spectacular coming up in the next 3 years, and otherwise I'll just skip this particular one and go for the following one. So the reason about today's discussion, obviously for those who just joined us, is about how frequent. Oh, hang on 1 second. Rod, if you want to carry on, I got a parcel pickup. So
okay.
1 second.
I'll hold the fort. Before we carry on, I like Robin's comment. I had a friend who had a Leica M hanging on his neck, walking on the streets, and some kids walked by and said, "Nice Lomo." Ha! You can't win, can you? But Lomos are cool. Not saying I'd want to use one, but they are pretty cool. So just having a look at some of the other queries. I thought I'd mention as well, while we're talking about dynamic range with this DJI, I wondered if anyone else had stumbled across the Canon DGO sensor, which is used in its high-end cinema cameras, which works on a very interesting principle. So as far as I can understand, while you're filming, it records 2 images simultaneously. So it records one with a high gain circuit and another with a low gain circuit, then combines them in real time to get an extended dynamic range of 16 plus stops. So that'd be a nice feature to see in filtering down the Canon line. So Jimmy, I was just explaining about Canon's DGO sensor. Have you come across that?
No, DGO sensor.
So it's in the higher end cinema cameras. I think that's the C300, but possibly others.
Right.
So it records using 2 signals, one high gain and one low gain, and combines them in real time to get a wider dynamic range than a single capture.
Yep.
So that is an interesting way to get extended dynamic range. It'd be nice to see that in stills cameras, I think.
I'm not entirely sure how that works technically, and I think to some extent Lumix cameras, but the Micro Four Third line, the GX line is using that. So
they've got a similar thing, haven't they? Yeah.
Right. They got the dual base ISO. So like one is 400, 800, one the other one 1600.
But with this, I think hasn't got a Panasonic got a thing where they combine those when processing, an optional extended dynamic range mode, I think, because that's the point of the Canon one, that it's not swapping circuits at a certain ISO. It's using 2 circuits all the time.
Yep.
But anyway, that's going off topic rather.
Yes. Just 1 second, sorry. Yeah, keep going, and you guys, just need to...
Keep going. I've stopped.
For some reason, my wife is calling me, so I'm not entirely what she wants from me.
Okay.
Just give me 1 second. I
That's fine.
hope it's not something emergency.
No, that's fine. That's fine. But it occurred to me one of the questions that we could ask this afternoon is whether anyone has ever regretted upgrading to a newer or what seemed to be a better camera, and then realised that actually it's not quite as good as the camera they had. Because I had that experience with the Nikon D7200 back in the day, Nikon's 24 megapixel APS-C DSLR, which they replaced with the D7500, which was 20 megapixels. And although it would shoot 4K video and did some other stuff, faster burst shooting, I felt that it was a lesser camera. So I wondered if anyone else had had that same experience of thinking they were upgrading to a newer model and then finding it wasn't quite as good or was really no better than the one they had already. So if anyone's had that experience, it'd be quite cool to hear about that. But I also wanted to quickly mention one of the things that Jimmy has suggested, that maybe skip a generation when you're replacing your camera just to get a bigger technical jump. And I kind of feel I wish I'd done that with my OM gear, because I swapped from an OM1, it's confusing, isn't it? Not an OM1, an OMD EM1 Mark III to the OM1. I wish I'd just hung on a bit for the OM1 Mark II, because that would have been a proper jump. Whereas with hindsight, I don't feel the jump from the EM1 Mark III to the OM1 was really that big. I know that technically it's a superior camera, but I think in terms of handling and operation, not so sure. And on that topic specifically, has anyone else found the OM1 autofocus a little bit flaky now and again? I have a couple of issues with it. You're right there, Jimmy.
The joy of running a live stream, isn't it?
So I was just explaining about my upgrade from the EM1 Mark III to the OM1, and I thought I should have waited. Of course, I didn't know the Mark II was coming. But anyway, a question I have is about the autofocus on the OM1. I know that technically it's much, much more advanced.
Yes.
But I found it struggles a bit with backlighting.
Yes.
And it can misfocus in a way that my EM1 III never did.
Right.
And the other rather curious thing is that because it's got so many autofocus points, I like to use single point autofocus. So each one of these is now quite small. I can't see them. Half the time with a very complex subject, I can't see the AF point. It gets lost. And I've never had that before, and I wondered if anyone else has struggled with that.
Funny you mentioned that. I mean, I now have multiple brands of cameras, and I've been testing them in all kinds of working conditions, and I do find most cameras struggle backlit anyway. Some may behave slightly better than the other, but I also find out that it's also lens dependent. For the past few months, I've been using my Nikon quite a bit, the ZF, to do a lot of my jobs. And because I got so many lenses to review, so I might as well use the lens to do my job, right? And I do find some lenses are worse when it comes to autofocus, even though it's the same camera, right? Technically, it should focus the same, right? But I actually found that some lenses would misfocus. When in a backlit situation, worse than the others. So that is a very interesting thing. I'm not entirely sure why that is or how that would happen like this. Whether other lenses on the OM1 will work better than the one you try. I did find that my 25 1.2 Pro on the OM1 did struggle a bit, but not the 17. So
it's interesting.
It's a very interesting thing. So I'm not entirely sure why and whether OM or any manufacturers should really look into the lens firmware to make it work better with the newer generation cameras, because a lot of the time you find that they don't even bother upgrading lens software, the firmware. And
No.
so maybe some of them were a little bit out of date compared to the newer tech, new algorithm, newer things. I'm not entirely sure. But they should really work on something, upgrading some of the lenses, or making them perform the way they should in the newer type of cameras.
I mean, somebody stop me if I'm going completely the wrong direction here, but my understanding is with phase detect AF,
Yep.
the principle is that it works out how far out of focus your subject is
Yep.
and in what direction,
Yep.
tells the lens what to do, and has
Yep.
to assume it does it. Whereas
Yep.
with contrast AF, which everybody thinks is rubbish, actually checks
It's better.
that the
Yes.
thing is in focus.
Yes.
So phase detect AF is one of these things that we've all bought into because everybody says how much better it is.
Yeah.
But I'm not convinced it always is.
No, I do
It's
find
a
that
different
the
operating principle.
it is. I mean, I do find that if you're really asking for critical focus, contrast detect is actually better. It may have that pulsing
think
thing
so,
that
yeah.
everybody hates, but but when because it's contrast based, right? It's a line. It's a line. It sees the black and white. If it doesn't see it, it's not in focus. So it really pick up the details. So I do find that if you do point-to-point focus, contrast detect is actually, to me anyway, better for shooting portrait, unless they're walking or moving around or things like that. And then just when face detect comes in handy.
And I think as well, you have to remember that most makers use a hybrid system of phase detect and contrast AF
Yes.
anyway. And
Yes.
they wouldn't if contrast AF was useless. So I agree with you. I think for critical focus, not necessarily when time is short or you're shooting bursts, but
Yep.
for critical focus, I think contrast AF it's better in principle.
Yeah.
Because it checks that the image is actually in focus
Yeah.
rather
Yeah.
than checking where the lens needs to be focused and then assuming it's going to be fine.
Yeah. Of
If
course.
that makes any sense.
Yes, I think it makes sense there. I see Robin's name on the chat room here. Hello, Robin, and good to see you here. And he actually quite funny. He say that he got a friend who had a Leica M hanging around his neck on the street, and then some
Yes.
kid walked
I
and
saw
said,
that, yeah.
"Nice low-mo camera." Brilliant. Soon they're gonna say, "Oh, that's the new Fujifilm X half." Yeah.
Well,
It's not. Yeah.
I think that's going to be the next big thing, is the X106 has had it.
Yep.
Now that
Yep.
we've got the X half.
We got the X half now. Yes. So I
Because
bought in the
it's
right time. I bought in the right time, so I could sell it on for double the profit, right?
I think you probably will. I think
Yeah.
you probably will. What's the phrase? Scalping. Is that the phrase?
Scalping. I don't know. Flipping. I don't know. Flipping.
Where you buy stuff that's in high demand, then sell
Yep.
it
Yeah.
at
You flip.
at
You
inflated
flip.
prices.
You
Yeah.
flip it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that is quite funny. Right, Yumi here, and upgrading. I'm out buying old cameras. I have the EM1
Yeah.
Mark II, but I have gone and bought the EP3. Oh, that's an interesting choice there. But funny enough, we talk about upgrading. I think there are few cameras from Olympus line. I mean, Rod, you can chip in on this because you've seen other cameras that are more cameras than I do. But in the Olympus line, there are a couple of cameras I think to me is revolutionary. Or when it's a big upgrade compared to the previous generation. One is the EM1 Mark II, which is what Yumi just said. I think EM1 Mark II is a big jump from the EM1 Mark I. Huge jump. AF motor is way better, faster, more accurate, bigger battery. You can literally say that this is a completely new camera even though, it's the same EM1 line, it's the same form factor, same shape, same design, but it just performs like a whole new camera altogether. And another camera that personally people may disagree with me is that the EM5 Mark III is a big jump compared to the Mark II, and likewise the Mark II to the Mark I was pretty big jump as well. These are the cameras I can think of. Yes,
The Mark III isn't everybody's favorite because it's plastic.
yeah,
But it is the controls are just quite superb. For the controls to be that good on a camera body that small is quite extraordinary. And I kind of wish the OM1 still had those two top dials, one for your index finger, one for your thumb on the top of the camera. I miss that. They were beautiful. But then talking about Olympus, the whole pen series, which was the first one to have 16 megapixels? Do you think it's the EPL 2 or 3?
Robin would know, and they had 12 for quite a long time, right? And
but then my feeling about the pen series is that they were all so similar. It probably didn't matter which one you got. Because talk about evolutionary changes. I can't, from memory, tell you what changed between the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, certainly the 10, which was basically the 9, but they called it the 10. No idea what happened there.
Well, the 9 is basically the same as 8.
So basically, that is a prime example of updates or upgrades hardly being worth any attention at all. But of course, they weren't designed for upgraders. They're designed for new users.
Well, speaking of devils, like didn't Lumix just was it Lumix who released a new Micro Four Third cameras that is basically changing the USB port? Was it a G something?
G100D.
Yeah, there you go.
It's a decent little camera, but it's got no IBIS. What were they thinking? Those Lumix G cameras have had IBIS since the Lumix G7, except for this one, and it's a vlogging camera.
Robin came back. It's the EPL5 or the EP5, whichever came first, had the 16 megapixel. Okay. I knew Robin would know because he's an expert in this.
Thank you, Robin. So somewhere along the line, we got 4K video, but apart from that, EPL5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, I'm not really sure it mattered which one you got. Yeah, really.
Well, I think from 8 onward, the EP series or the EPL series has become plastic, and the one before they're all metal bodies. So if you guys, if you like the like have a feel of metal, feel cold in the hand in the winter, go for the older EPL cameras. They're metal cameras.
So it's like you're gonna have 4K video, but you're gonna have to have a plastic camera.
Yeah, pretty much, yes. It's a bit like the EM5, right? The EM5 is exactly the same thing.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
I mean, it's a thing, that I'm not sure how everybody's view about plastic body versus metal bodies. I've handled both. I've used both for extended period of time at each one of these models. And to be quite honest, I don't, see the difference. I don't always buy into what the marketing department says. Oh, it's safe you weight or this and that. And there are maybe some reasons for that, but also I think it's mostly cost. And then, but I think in terms of usage, like a general handling and things like that, I actually don't find it difficult. I have plastic camera all the way back to film days, and I find they're still there. They're still looking new.
Well, it's like my Pen F. Metal, not weather sealed. OM5 or EM5 plastic, weatherproof. So you can't assume one is physically weaker than the other. It's not quite that simple.
No, unless you try to drop it from the first floor. But then I think both cameras will break anyway.
It cuts both ways. Metal distorts, plastic breaks. Either way. You're a bit screwed, really.
Pretty much. You got a deformed camera or cracked shell.
Well, if you deform a metal camera so that the casing splits or opens, you're in trouble, really. I think as far as durability is concerned, I think we tend to associate metal cameras with durability because they also tend to be more expensive, and more expensive cameras are made better. But I think in terms of whether one material is better than the other, it's like metal versus plastic lenses, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, Yes, of course. But Robin got back to one better. Yeah, it's actually I find it quite fun. I worked in construction like full time. Never complained of a plastic safety helmet. I love you, Robin. I love you. That's funny. Yeah,
Exactly,
try to wear a
exactly.
metal helmet. Yeah, construction site. You got
we
neck
do
after 2 hours.
We do get a bit snobbish about this stuff, don't we?
Yeah, we do. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
But how did
But
we get from upgrading and talking about helmets?
Well, would you upgrade to a metal version of the camera you've got?
Okay, right. That's interesting.
So if Olympus, it doesn't exist, if OM System
Yep.
made an OM6,
Yep.
that was basically the OM5,
Yep.
but made of metal,
Yep.
would we be excited?
If it came to the same cost, that would be exciting. But I guarantee it will be.
No,
It will, so it won't be.
No, but we all loved the Mark II, didn't we? Because it's metal.
We do. Right. Well, I mean, if you think about that, I mean, I think the line has been drawn now with the introduction of the OM3. I think the OM3 is the premium line of the OMs, the kind of like, let's say, the fashionable line of the OM series. So the OM5 would be the smaller brother. Will retain similar features, maybe just ever so slightly lesser than the OM3, but in plastic body. I don't think the OM5 or the subsequent that series is going to be metal built. They're going to keep it as plastic.
Yeah.
The metal one will be on the OM3, you know. And if you want a fashionable metal built body, high end kind of construction, will be the OM3 because you pay for that, right? You pay for the extra for that for that construction.
Yeah, that's what we pay. Yeah.
So that really is. And then obviously the OM1 will retain the crown. You know, there's going to be still the top line, the best ergonomic, you know, the highest quality, the highest spec, and the things like that, the fastest shooting experience. And the OM5 is going to be prosumer model, I would say, because they don't have really the EM10 or the OM10, whatever now. They don't have that entry level cameras now. So the OM series really starting from the OM5. So that will become the prosumer slash consumer level cameras.
I guess they're pitching that as the outdoor adventure camera.
They are, yes.
Weather sealed, durable. Whereas the OM1 is more it's basically birding. I'm not being fair, but that's how they present it.
What's the OM3 then? The OM3 is going to be the street travel, you know, the hipster style.
Hipster travel camera, yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. Well, it's not a bad thing, you know. That's what Fuji is gunning for, you know, the same market. You know, they're gunning for the hipster traveler influencers market who like something pretty around the neck.
Yeah. Ideally, something a bit more limited and worse than what's gone before. Just to make it seem more uncompromising.
Yeah, and I'm part of that crowd now, so I have the OM3. So yeah, so I'm fashionable by now just because I have an OM3.
I can't help feeling that Fujifilm could have saved themselves some trouble by taking, honestly, when your mind goes, it's like taking the XE4 and just spot welding the lens onto the body and call it a compact and sell it for 50% more.
Well, they got the X half.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Even better. There's no EVF. They're saving saving for more money. Just have a little glass window.
Well, it's a prime lens. Why couldn't you?
Yes, it's a prime lens, fixed focal length, but it has a 2.8 aperture.
Just needs a little window.
Yes. Right.
Instead of an EVF.
And now we've got another one here. I would prefer a weather seal Pen F Mark II than a metal one with no weather seal. There you go.
Right. Yeah. So are we saying then that we would upgrade if it was weather seal, or would we want more? I think we'd want more. But
everyone wants more.
This is an interesting. What would persuade us here to upgrade? Would it be resolution? Would you be persuaded by burst speed? Would you be persuaded by video specs?
Yep.
Or would you be persuaded by revolutionary ISO performance or dynamic range? What would it take to convince you that this was a big step worth paying for?
Right. Okay.
Not just system, but any brand.
Yeah.
Any
Yeah,
brand.
let's ask the audience here like the same question, but I want to split into two sections. Yeah, what would what camera upgrades do you think that would pursue you to upgrade? For what you're using right now, and another angle is in general for kind of like what we discussed last week. What type of cameras do you think that would attract people into buying cameras? So upgrade first. I think that I actually think that spec to me nowadays is irrelevant. I think we're coming to the point that most of the cameras out on the market now are fully capable of what I need to do. So it's no matter brand. Doesn't matter who it is, even Pentax. I could pick up a camera today and go and shoot professionally without a problem. I know it would satisfy my agency and everybody. Fine, I don't have a complaint spec-wise. So for me to make me upgrade, to make me buy a new camera these days is aesthetic. Something quirky, something nice, something different, and that will make me buy a camera or upgrade to a next camera. There's quite a good example that the reason why I bought the ZF is because the look. They have this set 6 or set 7. I could easily go that route if I want to buy a more advanced camera for similar sort of money when it first came out. So why didn't I go for this set 6? And then I just bought the ZF. I just bought for the look.
So why are you saying that you're never going to buy another camera, Jimmy?
I don't know. Maybe something quirky like the X-Half came out. I bought the X-Half. Remember?
Oh yeah, you haven't got it yet, though.
I haven't got it yet. Yeah, so something quirky.
I'll tell you what would be a good business, Jimmy, if you had a mind to it.
Yep.
Would be to pre-order every new camera, then sell your place on the list to other people.
Right.
Do you know only a few quid, but you do it 100 times. There's a business there.
So what will make you buy a new camera now, Rod? So now your turn.
Oh, I never expected having my question thrown back at me. That's not fair.
Everybody can think about that. What would make you buy your next camera?
I think like you, I'm interested in aesthetics and the experience.
Yeah,
I think I would like somebody to think more carefully about designing cameras that are good and efficient to use, to handle. Not cameras that just look pretty, but cameras that are actually intelligently designed to be not more complex, but more simple.
Yep.
Not to have more knob dials and function buttons, to have them thought through properly so you don't need as many.
Right.
And just to bring clarity and simplicity to the design. Yep. I don't hanker after a lot more megapixels. I feel that for what I need, 24 is enough. Obviously, we all like to zoom in as far as we can to look at an ant's antennae from 400 yards away, that kind of thing. But it's not necessary for me, and I can't pretend it is. Yeah. I would like more dynamic range.
Yeah.
I'm always nervous about highlight detail in my shots. I like to shoot a lot of backlit stuff. Very easy to lose highlights. I know you can work around it with careful exposure technique, and some cameras have expanded dynamic range options. I just feel I could do with a little bit more dynamic range.
Yeah.
But this isn't the way that sensor design is going.
No.
Everything is going towards video, which at the moment is not something I do or need to do.
No.
So, and if I did, I wouldn't buy a mirrorless camera to do it.
You go and buy a cine camera or a proper video camera.
Well, if it's that high end, yeah. But this is something we touched on earlier. If you turn up to a corporate video shoot, and it's a kind of thing that needs a crew. So you've got your sound engineer, you've got your focus puller, you've got your fixer, whatever you want. You've got a crew with you. You can't turn up with any old camera. I've seen people have shared with me commissions for video shoots that say you have to shoot this with Canon C200s, for example.
Yeah.
Because the client has a fixed idea about the camera hardware they're accustomed to, the results they've got in the past, maybe
Yeah.
their own production studios,
Yep.
aren't you. There's somebody else who says, I want C300 or C200 footage.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think if you're in that kind of business, you have to get the camera the client wants. But otherwise, I think most video capabilities for most solo shooters are already past the point
Yeah.
that they're necessary. They're just confusing.
So I guess we can kind of conclude today's that, you know, just to
I don't want
tell-
anything.
but yeah, and also tell the camera makers, you know, like, come on, wake up now. No one wants hybrid cameras.
No, quite. I'll have two. I'll buy a camera that's for stills. I'll buy a camera that's for video. That way, I agree with you. You can't do both at the same time. But if for some reason you have to, you can
Yep.
simply put one down, pick the other one up.
Yes.
You don't have to adjust
And-
6 custom settings for the ROG.
And to be quite
All
honest,
swap
you know,
lenses.
like despite what we're saying about hybrid cameras, you know, like a video-centric cameras can also take stills as well. You know, it has that feature.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So basically, like any pros to turn up at the job, the most of them would have 2, maybe 3 bodies anyway in the back as spares. So one of them could be a video cameras. You know, if you really need to shoot videos, you've got a video-centric cameras in the back that's ready for doing proper video work. But for me, yes, I think hybrid is just a little bit over the top. And I have to give some credit to OM System. I know people has been complaining about, oh, the video specs a bit shabby, you know, but and things, but you know, it's decent enough to do a lot of stuff, you know. And to be quite honest, you know, for those who've been following my channel would know that for the past 8 years, all the videos were shot with the EM1 Mark II and 3. The Micro Four Third camera, you guys watched it. No one actually come back. In fact, some people did ask me what camera that I use to shoot it. It looks quite nice. You know, I just say to them it's Micro Four Third. It's just the EM1 Mark II. And people thought, wow, really? I thought it was like a Sony whatever, you know. Yes.
So here's the thing. Everybody
Yep.
asks a photographer what camera they used. And you basically want to put your hand round their throat and say, the camera had nothing to do with it. This was me.
Yep.
And I think it's the same with video. People say, oh, you need 10-bit, 422, what have you. Did you grade that? What camera did you use? That stabilization looks amazing. It's not the camera. It's the operator knowing what to do that makes the difference. So that it's infuriating for videographers as it is for stills photographers. It's not the camera. It's
It
the
is.
person using it knowing
Yeah.
what to do and what the
Yep.
camera's capable of. But
Yeah.
I think if I was to be tempted into upgrading, it would be 2 cameras that are stripped back to what they need to do,
Right.
and to move away from this notion of hybrid cameras where you basically have
Yeah.
double the complexity in
Yep.
the same box. This for stills, that for video. I've got to shoot a video, get that. I want to shoot
Yeah.
some stills, I'll get this.
Yep.
I
Absolutely.
mean, if you've got a camera backpack or even a medium-sized shoulder bag, you can put 2
Yeah.
cameras in. Most of them are smaller than your lenses.
yeah.
So that would tempt me to upgrade. If my EOS R8, I would upgrade that if Canon split it into 2 cameras, one for stills, one for video.
yeah.
It's very good at both, but having
Yep.
both lots of controls in one camera,
Yeah,
pain.
it's a bit
It's a pain.
overwhelming. Yeah. So let's go through some comments, which is quite funny. I just
Right,
want to answer one from Mark first about the OM3. I absolutely love the cameras, but it scratches quite easily. And I find it quite interesting because mine was not scratched that much. I do actually use it quite a bit. I did get a knock, so there's a little dent on top of the prism housing, and but other than that, it seems to be holding up fairly well. But what I would say though is any of the metal Olympus cameras before that is that silver tends to scratch quite easily compared to the black one, and I think it's to do with the actual surface coating. So the silver is smooth, and while the black one is more textured, so it's slightly more rugged when it comes to the, I don't know what paint they use, what sort of coating they use. So I do find that so a lot of the silver cameras tends to have the same kind of things going whenever you scratch it.
When they mark up, is it like a dark grey?
No, well, it's a scratch, so it's just a line. So
Right, okay.
yeah, it's kind of greyish, just because it's silver,
And they're not brass, are they?
No, they're not brass anymore.
If they're brass, I think if you've got the Leica, you probably spend a lot of your evenings rubbing on the corners to show the brass, because that's the look, isn't it?
It is. I mean, if it's brass, I don't mind scratching it. I like to see the brass underneath. That'll be really good. So
I like all to do special editions that are pre-rubbed.
They did have one. They sell it for like £2,000 more. They did have one.
Pre-rubbed.
Yes, pre-rubbed. They actually had one back in the
I just made that up.
M240 era, so about 9 years ago, they had an edition. This is collaboration with a singer. I can't remember which one it was, and the camera actually it will be sold to you pre-rubbed, so all the edges have brassing.
How truth is stranger than fiction.
How true is Leica's clientels are.
I know. I don't know how they've done, but it's remarkable.
Yeah, and they sold out, as Leica cameras usually do, and with this kind of special edition,
pre-dented,
pre-scratch all your wheels, all four wheels,
pre-keyed from leaving on the road, and people resenting you.
It's key by an artist.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. That's a good point.
There you go. Right, Carl say that ISO performance and rear screen would make me upgrade. Okay, that's an interesting. Rear screen. That's an interesting thing, though. I mean, I've never really quite compared about the rear screen, because I really look at it as just to access the menu mostly, and just really quickly preview some images if I really want to. So I'm never really too bothered about the rear screen, let's say resolutions or brightness of it.
But what if you could have a 5-inch screen, not 3-inch?
Then the cameras become bigger.
Well, I'm not so sure, because no, I don't think so. I mean, mind you, I shot myself in the foot here, because Blackmagic Pocket Cinema cameras are huge. Yes. So that argument's not going to work. But yeah, I think just shuffle the controls around a bit.
Yeah,
I'm sure it could be done.
Maybe make it simpler, like the Leica camera, so they just have a few buttons instead of a ton of buttons, I guess.
Then you wouldn't have to rig it up with an external monitor, perhaps.
And ISO performance, I guess, on the Micro Four Thirds terms, perhaps, but not so much about full frame these days. I think full frame is reaching to a point that, even if you shoot at 12,800 is pretty usable in most cases. I think so. It's not in the 10 years ago now. So now we're at the age that you can shoot quite easily up to that high. Even Micro Four Thirds, 3,200, is perfectly usable, in my eyes, and I don't find any problem with that. 6,400 with a little bit of pure raw magics, that's also usable.
Yeah,
and,
it's fine.
So and to be quite honest, how often do you really need to push that high anyway? But I think so.
No, I was only going to say, I think the danger is, thanks to YouTube, we all know how to find the weaknesses in our cameras. And if you're not careful, you start concocting situations to bother yourself with what you find that you wouldn't normally shoot in anyway. So you might set your own camera to ISO 12,800 and be horrified at what you see.
Yeah.
But overlook the fact that never once in all the time leading up to this had you ever needed to. So we've all got very good at probing weaknesses and being obsessed by them.
We are, and we seem to like to watch videos when they criticize heavily on a product than the one that actually praises it. It's kind of weird these days. We're in the world of negativity. Some people actually like to watch videos and get influenced by things that they said about how bad this camera is and that, but not necessarily actually look at what this camera is actually aiming at or for. And so it's kind of weird, because obviously a lot of the new cameras these days, some of them are quite niche. So these niche cameras are not for everyone. So
Yeah.
you know, you can't say everyone suddenly is going to fork out $6,000 on the GXF, you know, the new compact camera with the medium format camera.
Oh yeah.
GFX
Yeah.
and the GFR, no GFR. I can't remember the model name now. And
Yeah, I know we know the one. Yeah,
so basically, the bigger brother of the X100 with a medium
Yeah.
format sensor. And
the fixed
so
lens.
yeah,
Fixed
so
focal length lens, yeah.
when that came out, you know, the reviews were mixed from consumers, you know, saying, oh no, well, we don't need this, but X100 is better, it's cheaper, you know, blah blah blah. But it's a niche camera. Don't forget that, you know, it's a medium format camera, and it's not going to be for everyone. The price obviously dictates that as well. But same as the X half, you know, people also have very strong mixed reactions of their camera. But again, JPEG only camera, is it for you? But there are plenty of people out there just with JPEG. They don't really care about RAW or processing RAW. So obviously not for the one like us, you know, like to process our photos, right? And yeah, there are plenty of examples like that. The new GRD cameras coming up, you know, this, you know, it's a small compact camera with APS-C sensors. Is it for you? Some people like them, love them even, but some people just say, you know, hate the idea of having such a compact camera or compact camera in general. So yeah, it's weird that we like to complain and also look at the flaws or the indeficiencies of each of these cameras.
Yeah. I think you just have to be very clear about what you want from your camera and what you want it to be, and also not to get too drawn into what the influencers are saying at any one time. I mean, the GR is an interesting example.
Yeah,
because it's for me it's a conflict.
yeah.
There is no other APS-C camera that you can put in a shirt pocket,
Yep.
but still captures images of the quality you would expect from a full-size camera.
Yep.
In that respect, it is unique.
It is. Yes.
However, I just don't like them. I find them a bit small to operate. Also, the issue I have with that is that I think it's the whole zoom lenses versus primes.
Oh yes.
I think prime lenses are perfect when you are in an environment where you know what you're going to shoot, you know where you're going to stand, you know where your subject is, and you don't have to react to changing distances.
Yes.
So I'm not convinced by this whole idea that a 35mm lens is the perfect street lens, because it's not. Because if you see something across the road that will make a great photograph, you've lost it. If you've got a zoom, you've got it. But at the same time, if you've got a zoom lens on the street, people are going to know you're a photographer. There's no solution that's exactly right. You have to find the one that suits you. So if you've got a Ricoh GR and your mind is adapted to a 28mm lens or a 40mm lens, and you accept that there are some shots you'll miss or there are some shots you'll have to cross the road to get, that's fine. But it won't suit everyone. And that's why you have to remember that the internet is full of opinions from people who think they've found the answer, the secret, only for them, not necessarily for you.
Yeah. And I guess, you know, like it's very easy to draw into someone famous and popular and as well. You know, to me, you can see it like that. You know, a lot of the photographer or a lot of the influencers or online photographers, they like to showcase images, and then they basically subsequent backing up by, okay, I use this great lens to capture all these images. You know, those are obviously the greatest shot that he took with that lens or with that particular equipment, and not necessarily everything that you saw there. So it's quite easy to be confused by that as well for someone who may be new to photography, you know, just by, you know, Googling and watching what is popular at the moment and things like that, and easily be swayed by this sort of images and perhaps a certain way of talking, and to kind of like sway you into that decision, oh, that's a better lens than the others, or that's a better equipment than the others.
So this is a big part of marketing these days, getting influencers to say that your lens or your camera has unlocked doors or revealed secrets or transforms the way you can see and capture
Yes.
the world.
Yes.
It's just how it's done now. But you have, I think, we're all too different.
Yeah.
For that to be true.
Yeah.
And I think this is where we get stuck with upgrades, because every time a new camera comes along, there'll be 100 YouTubers who we know and respect telling us
Yes.
we have to get it because
Yes.
it's that good. But
Yep.
you just have to step back, calm down, and look at it rationally,
Yeah.
and figure out whether for you it actually is.
Yeah.
And the thing is as well, YouTubers have their specialities.
Yes.
And you'll get somebody, for example, who takes some incredible monochromatic street shots from Vietnam, say.
Yeah.
And you think, these are so good, they must be good at everything. No,
Yeah.
this is all they do. They can't do anything else. So don't judge yourself according to what you see
Yeah.
online.
I guess, like people just need to be mindful about what they see, what they watch online, and just like how I teach my kids, just don't believe everything they say online.
Look at the motive as well as the content.
Yeah, of course, I guess what you can take away from YouTube videos or YouTube reviews in general is that take that information, but don't get swayed by how good things are until you actually try the camera yourself or the lens yourself. And I watch a ton of YouTube videos whenever I want to buy something, and so I'm part of that crowd who watch a lot of YouTube videos. But I don't necessarily want to believe everything, until I actually go to the showroom, touch the camera, hold it in my hand, take a few shots, go back and test it. I don't do impulse things, and I think that's the wrong way of putting it. Yes, it's great for the companies to get the attentions, get the momentum going, so they know the product is out, people know about it, and but yeah, it's very easy to sway by these influencers these days, and especially the bigger ones. And whenever they say, "Oh, this is the greatest camera ever," it gets it, before you're all sold out online.
My advice would always be see for yourself.
Yes.
Before you decide.
Yeah.
I'm stuck in an interesting upgrade dilemma, which I think is interesting because it calls attention to specifications versus reality.
Yeah.
So I've got Canon's cheap 24-105 f4 to 7.1 kit zoom. It is cheap.
Yep.
So you wouldn't expect too much. And it does rely heavily on digital corrections. For a while I've been thinking, really I ought to swap this for the more expensive Canon RF 24-105 f4 L lens.
Right. Okay.
But then I've got a whole lot of shots taken with both.
Right.
And I'm going to say something sacrilegious here to Canon owners. The cheaper lens is actually better. It's got a more restricted aperture at longer focal lengths, but it's sharper. It's got better edge-to-edge sharpness and across the focal range than the L lens. So here's another thing to throw into the pot, that something with better specifications does not necessarily do the job we want better. It might just be getting something bigger and more expensive that's actually not quite as useful.
Well, I think in general terms, and you probably agree with me, and a lot of these ultra fast prime lenses, for instance, the professional lenses, with some exceptions, of course, but most of them, they have ultra bright apertures, really for you to utilize that for light gathering, like for low light shots, not necessarily for sharpness, because you all know that the prime or the optimal sharpness usually comes in about 5.6, 6.3 anyway in any lenses. So having 1.2 lens doesn't mean that it's sharper than a 1.8 prime, and
But I think the other thing as well with that is that's a very good point. If you choose a 1.2 over a 1.4, you're probably paying twice as much for a lens that weighs twice as much and is only of any use on those occasions where you shoot at f1.2. And how often is that going to be? You know, you have to take a balanced approach to this stuff, I think.
Yes. Of course, I mean, there are people out there who shoot everything wide open these days.
well, the thing is, if you just spent all that money on the lens, you've got to, haven't you?
I guess an obligation, right? I saw Mark's comments quite funny here. I watch people sand down the dials on the ZF because they're brass.
I thought I was making this stuff up, but yeah.
So it's a thing, you know.
That is the influencer economy. This is what
I'm gonna get my Dremel out and start to sand down my M, like my Leica M now.
No, I think you're gonna have to. It's gonna be harder than that, Jimmy. You're gonna have to take off the paint authentically. You're probably gonna have to put a very soft polishing mop on with just the right grade of polishing compound so that it's taken off in the right way.
or wear gloves and put some T-cuts on it and then just keep rubbing it.
Yeah, that could take a while. Yeah, because if you then put it on a channel, you're going to get people coming along saying, you did that deliberately, you did that manually. That's not proper wear. I know I did that.
People would go that length to show that, you know, I've got a cool camera there.
Yeah.
Right. David also says ZF has brass knobs and painted black. Use paint remover to show the brass. Yes.
Or you get some brass paint.
Oh, yes, you can do that. But then the paint will get rubbed off anyway eventually.
Even better, double win.
Oh, right, okay. If you want to go back to black, just rub off the brass paint.
I don't know.
Right, Anthony. Only complaint with the OM1, unlike the EM1 original, is harder to feel the. I can't read that. Shutter button when wearing winter gloves. Okay, shutter release on the OM1 is recessed. I think it feels the same to me. I don't have problem with the shutter button between the two.
I don't much like where the dials are, if I'm honest. I don't mind the shutter button.
To be honest,
the recessed dials.
When I wear gloves, I can't feel any buttons.
Well, so this is a very good point that's been made here.
Yeah.
I've often thought every tripod test should be carried out with thick gloves on. So should every camera test, because everything that works nicely while he's sat in your living room, nice and warm with a cup of tea, and the instructions by his side.
Yeah,
that's fine, but that's not how you take pictures.
No.
You take pictures in a hurry, in a howling gale, half wrap a mountain, where you can't even feel your fingers. That's when you find out what the handling is like.
It is. I mean, I know, like, wearing gloves and using your camera is probably quite rare unless you're living in a very cold place. In winter time, I do wear gloves out, and I wear something called the photo gloves, which is quite thin at where the fingers are, so you can still feel the buttons quite easily. But I can imagine in the colder weather, when you have a thicker gloves on, probably a bit harder to do that. But yeah, whenever I wear thick gloves, I can't feel anything. I have to take the gloves off to use the cameras very quickly and put the gloves back on. And that's usually my way of shooting in cold winter.
So I think we've taken a bit of a wrong turn here, where it is more difficult to operate a camera than it used to be. That's one advantage of Fujifilm's XT series, that you actually have got an aperture ring that you can use when you've got gloves on, and a shutter speed dial that you can use with gloves on. So physical dials, that's nice, good thing.
So Blaine has an interesting comment there earlier, and I just picked it up. And camera company clearly markets towards certain crowd, influencer. I can't believe they didn't make this camera specifically for me.
It is a strange thing that we now rely on this type of review for opinions about cameras rather than photography journalists as such.
Yeah.
And what that means is you do get a very individual perspective.
Yeah.
And it's surprising how many people in the world there are who can't imagine that there are people different to them. And if they can imagine it, they don't want to talk about it. because everyone should be like them. So, but it goes with the territory, doesn't it? If you want to do well on social media, you have to have a strong opinion, express strongly.
Yeah.
So it goes with the territory, I guess.
Right. Mark got a very interesting point here. I just want to bring that up. Right. I'm not sure how much better photography only cameras can actually get tech-wise.
No.
And I think people sometimes just be something have to pick up and shoot every. And I think we kind of talk about this. In fact, I actually kind of mentioned that if I now want to buy a camera, my next camera, it has to be quirky. It has to be something different. It has to, that makes me want it. Not like I said, specification doesn't interest me anymore. I don't really care about 40 megapixel. I don't really care about 18 stop dynamic range. Or how high the ISO can shoot, or in fact how many frames per second I can shoot. I don't use any of those stuff. And sometimes, but most of the time I just want something that makes me want to pick it up and go out and shoot. So something that had that emotional connections in some way. So I think you're right, Mark. I don't think a photography camera can get any better. I mean, apart from some of the stuff that we kind of mentioned, but resolution went stagnant. There's no more high ISO bumps now. Everything's kind of remain the same. And practically, everything you get these days are perfectly fine for the next 5 to 6, maybe even 10 years, depending on what sort of resolution you want to aim for. So any new camera has to look cool, just like the OM3 or, the OM5.
So, I mean, this is the problem for camera makers, that they've already made cameras as good as they need to be, but they've still got to keep selling them. But I think what they're doing in the moment is developing them with more technical complexity, which isn't really helping photographers.
No.
It's a shame that they can't focus more, no pun intended, on clarity and design.
Yeah.
So it would be nice if cameras could go back to being things that you look through rather than look at. Because when we're all out taking photographs, I can't pretend I haven't used that one before. But when you're out with a modern camera, much of your attention is on the camera because it has to be.
Yeah.
Whereas anyone who started out with analog film and SLRs, there were only 3 things you had to do.
Yeah.
All your attention was on what you were shooting, not on whether you had the right ISO, the right white balance, whether you're in the right burst mode, whether you had the right autofocus mode, whether your zone AF should be here or down here, or whether you had your subject recognition on. There's too much to look at that's taking your eyes off your subject.
I think in some way, now I know we're sidetracking a little bit, but, and that is one of the reasons why I bought the X half, or at least pre-ordered it, is the fact that it's a very simple camera. It's so simple to the point that I can forget about a lot of the stuff that I've been trying to mess around with on the menu system and modern cameras. It really is a point and shoot camera. It's as simple as that. I know we can talk about GR is the same thing. There's compact cameras and blah blah blah. There's so many nicer options for the price. But I like the idea. I just want to see, how simple it is, because don't forget that, if you look at the menu system of the X half, it's even simpler than you think. It just really literally just a couple of pages and a few icons, and you can do things with the camera. And it's JPEG only. Once you selected black and white, you're stuck with a black and white image for life. You can't change it back, and things like that. So it's because of that, I just want to see these restrictions in 2025 and how that will impact on a photographer like myself, who are so used to controlling almost every aspect of the image, when it comes to the output. I want to make sure, I can process the highlight and the shadow. I need to have this and that, making sure that it looks good in the final image and things. I just want to go back to the basic. I know I can do that with film cameras, but I want to do that digitally and have a very simple basic cameras. I want to prove the point that whether the X half actually makes sense or not. So it's more like an experiment that I want to see whether it is a camera that Fujifilm thinks that it is.
I would upgrade to a camera that did less.
Yeah. Oh,
it sounds contrary, but I would.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I would be upgrading to a better design. I've already got all the technical features I need, and quite a few I don't. But what I don't have is clarity and simplicity of design.
Yeah.
I would upgrade to that. And I think your points about the X-Half are very valid. And I think this whole JPEG versus RAW argument, I know as well as anybody the technical advantages of RAW. But at the same time, when you shoot RAW, it's an act of caution, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're thinking, I'm going to play safe. I'll shoot RAW. I'll have a bit more scope later in case I've mucked it up.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're working with a camera that only shoots JPEGs, well, just get the exposure right. We're not
Which
used
you're supposed to do in the first place.
We're not used to having to do that. But it's not that difficult. I know it's not quite that simple.
No.
But I do feel this is the point. We're using RAW as a crutch.
Yes.
To save ourselves trouble when we're shooting.
I think yeah, I think you're getting the point there. I think that I know we're kind of definitely sidetracking now, but the RAW argument is interesting because maybe we're separate into another chat another time.
Yes.
But the raw argument is very interesting because I'm pretty sure most of you, if not all of you, shoot RAW, right? Let me know you only shoot JPEG.
Can I also just to get people perhaps a little steamed up ahead of that discussion, I don't know how well aware people are that some modern cameras do a better job of processing JPEGs than your RAW software because the engineers understand the sensor and the lenses implicitly. So, for example, Canon has its lens optimizer, digital lens optimizer, is it DLO?
Yep.
So that will compensate not only for distortion, corner shading, chromatic aberration, it will also jiggle the sharpness towards the edges of the frame to compensate for the average consumer lens. Fujifilm's got something similar with its LMO, lens modulation optimizer. So increasingly these days I find that I write a lot about RAW processing and editing generally. The JPEGs coming out of the camera are so well corrected, it can be quite difficult to get to that point on your RAW software, let alone improve on the results. You still get more control over white balance and highlights and shadows.
Yeah.
But in terms of optical corrections, your JPEGs are probably going to be better, to be fair.
Yeah, so I mean, there are two ways of looking at it, but I do think RAW has somehow changed photographers' a workflow to the point that we think that we do need to shoot RAW to get the better image, right? It's not necessarily the case in some cases, not all cases, of course, and but a very well executed photograph with the correct lighting, depending on what kind of shoot you are. But in a commercial sense, let's say if you use a lot of strobes to light up the scene to get the look that you want, and I personally think that RAW would not actually give you much better than a JPEG straight out of the camera because the light is constructed. Everything's constructed to the point that you know exactly where the lights are falling, the angle of it and everything, so it's well controlled. In those environments, I actually really don't see the point of having RAW, to be honest, and because it's a manufactured scene, and full stop, right?
Out of habit, I shoot RAW and JPEG. I don't know why it's quite wasteful, but I do. But what I tend to find is that, if I'm honest, when I've imported both sets of images into, say, Lightroom or Capture One, mostly the JPEGs are fine.
Yeah.
So all I've done with the RAWs is give myself another job to do.
Yep.
So I think, perhaps we should save that argument
next time.
For another
next
day.
time. Right. John Young has an interesting one here as well. I found that a faster lens helps focusing.
It depends. I think you get more visual snap if you're focusing manually.
Yep.
You can see it more clearly in the EVF. And possibly it's better for the autofocus system. I don't know.
I think in some way it does, especially if you look at camera specs in general, they actually have a little asterisk stars next to the specs there, you know, and you can get the AF work within like -6 EV to whatever EV kind of that range. So basically, it dictates what's the light level that the camera can still focus, right? So you find it in the minus sections, in the low light section, in the -8, -6, they have a little star next to it. And you look at the bottom of the page, and the little star say that works with 1.2 or 1.0 lenses.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
The only thing it doesn't say is works fast. So I've used cameras which can focus in very low light levels.
Yeah.
But not necessarily straight away.
No, and that's too. But I think in some ways, especially how mirrorless camera works these days, that whenever just before the shutter closes or take the image, they would they basically open up the aperture wide, and then so like if you got a little bit of shallow depth of field going, it does really help to pop the one in focus out of it. I guess, you know, it just kind of makes it easier to focus or find the one that you want to focus on.
It's not massively helpful if you need to use hyperfocal focusing or zone focusing, which are as valid today as they always were. They're not as fashionable. But if you like to focus in over a range of depths, then that's a different conversation. But anyone remember the Canon A-DEP mode on its old DSLRs?
A-DEP.
A-DEP.
yes. I remember A-DEP, yes.
That was so clever, they dropped it. So basically, what that did was used all the focus points, found the nearest thing, found the thing furthest away under a focus point, and then worked out what aperture and focus distance you would need to get those two extremes sharp. How clever is that? And why drop that? But anyway, that's another debate.
Right, Rod, this one's for you. This one's for you. Mark actually say that a complete off topic, but have you seen Light Lens Lab are bringing back K14 processing and remaking Kodachrome? I didn't know about that. I need to look it up now.
If I just hope it's as good as it used to be, but I so miss my Kodachromes. Do you know, I miss the yellow box. I miss having to wait a fortnight to get the damn things back so they've forgotten what shots. And I miss the smell of Kodachrome slides.
You see,
I've always been a bit weird.
You see, like if Kodak somehow make a camera a bit like the Fuji from X-Half, like a expensive JPEG camera that gives you the Kodachrome look, very, you know, like and also have a little bit of fragrance coming out from the smell of the film.
Well, also, if you have to wait a fortnight before you can open the files.
Yeah. Would you pay for that, Rod?
No. I just miss it. I do just miss it. I miss a photograph. I miss negatives and slides because they are physical things.
Yeah.
I know that's stupid, but I do.
Right. Blaine also said that he, I guess it's following what we talk about the X-Half and things, simplify models. And what if OM took the opportunity to bring back the EM10 but simplify it? I guess they could. And also make it quite affordable too if they want to do that.
What else would you have?
But actually, you know, you think about it though, the EM10 is already quite simple. Comparative. I know it has some degree of computational stuff like the live composite is built in there and the IBIS and things. It's quite simple, quite a simple camera.
Get rid of that. Get rid of the video and sell them a separate OM10V. And EM10V.
like Sony, the ZV-E10, whatever, you know. Make a V there. So, yeah, that's a video camera.
Yeah, S and V. S for stills, V for video.
Yep.
And also do a Sony and take away the EVF and charge more. Do something like that.
Yeah. Or no back screen, charge even more.
I wasn't going to bash Sony anymore. Sorry, I'll take that back. That back.
No, I think there is a case there. You know, people obviously love quirky cameras and niche cameras these days, and it may not be in a huge quantity, with the exception of Fuji stuff. And then, but you know, there is a case for it, and I hope that, you know, more people will get on board and trying to get us some, you know, something different than anything that we've seen today. Now is getting a little bit boring to me.
They need to make us care again.
Yes,
and I think they can do it with technology, but we've had it with that.
We've gone past it now.
Yeah, we've gone past it. Now the other side. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what you know, pretty much what Mark said, right? You know, like, what else can you do for photography, right? What else can you do in a photography camera?
Less but clearer.
Less is more. Less is more, right? Yeah, it
Less
is
is
true. You know, like
sometimes.
we just don't need anything new these days. You know, we got all the AF we want. We want, you know, all the speed that we want. We all the resolution we ever need. You know, to be honest, you know, how much more resolution do you need? and most of us don't print, so like having 100 megapixel doesn't really mean a thing to me. That's why I always say 2025 is really like a sweet spot for me, and I don't need anything more. Yeah, it's just crazy.
So I don't want to go over old ground, but talking about doing a simple version of the EM10,
Yeah.
why don't you make a digital trip? Take the guts of the EM10,
Yeah.
put it in the old Trip 35 body. All you've got is zone focusing and automatic exposure,
Yep.
a fixed focal length lens, and an optical viewfinder. Bang.
Oh, imagine even use the old selenium a light filter in the front of the lens.
why don't we have solar powered cameras? I've got a light powered wristwatch.
Yep.
I'm surely.
No. I do want better. Yeah, no solar panel, but have a fake winder. You know, we like winder these days. Everyone talk about the winders, right? Have the winder to power it up the camera. Wind it about 4 times. Yeah, a little generator.
Like,
wind it 5 times to take one shot. Yeah, keep winding 5 times to take one shot.
Well, the Trip 35
Yep.
has a winding wheel, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So you just turn it till it's got enough charge to
Yeah.
take another photograph.
There you go. No battery needed. You're always on.
You don't need power for a screen because you wouldn't have one.
No.
So it could work.
It could work. It could really work.
Invented wind-up radios, but yeah, either use a solar cell to charge it, mounted around the lens, or a winder, or both to give the power.
Yeah.
And you've got an eco-friendly, back to basics Trip 35. Don't know what you call it.
Or you pre-wind it, yeah, so you make enough charge for the whole row.
Trip 35D.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I mean,
I
just make a cheap, simple camera. I'm pretty sure it could be a hit. You know, like people like point and shoot these days, especially.
Well, if you want somebody to upgrade from a phone, give them something as simple as a phone.
Blaine just agreed with us. Yeah, digital trip, hotcakes sewed.
Fabulous camera,
Yes.
limited but perfect for what it's intended to do.
Yeah, you know, like they really should look back at a lot of these like past icons. You know, like bring them back, digitize them, and make it cool again. I think that might work for OM system. You never know.
I mean, it's like the Nikon FM and FM2 SLRs became a blueprint for the perfect retro camera.
Yes.
Fine, I think Nikon's done that, but they've just added too much stuff. The digital version should have done what the original did and no more.
Yes.
Why would it need to do more?
You know, like the both the ZF and ZF-C that I have doesn't really need video features, to be honest. You know, they just chuck the video features and just keep it as a film camera. You know, like that's it.
Yeah, does it need a burst mode? Probably not.
Yep. Make a fake
All
winder.
that stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is my only contribution to what I would upgrade to.
Yeah.
Better
Right,
design.
Okay, we're coming up to the end of today's chat, but it's been quite fun. And I think the upgrades. I think everyone has their say about upgrading. I think interesting to see some of your comments there. If you got anything else that you want to add to it and chip into the discussion, please do so by leaving some comment down below. And anything else you may want us to talk about in the next following chats and things like that, also leave some comment down below. But next week is going to be a little bit different because I think a few episodes ago we talked about it. We're going to start interviewing some photographers, professional photographers or known photographers out there, and to have a discussions about photography journeys, how they got into the trade, what sort of things that inspire them to take certain type of photos. For instance, it's all about learning their crafts and also appreciating photography in general from different genre, from different photographer styles and things. So it's a very interesting thing. So next week we're going to kickstart it with episode 1, and we'll be interviewing one of my friends who's Sean Gazelle. He's a very known food photographer, but ever since then he's evolved a lot into multifaceted photography now. So he does a lot of different things, but food photography is what he's known for. So we're going to interview him. We're going to talk about his photography. We're going to showcase some of his work, and please remember to join in if you are interested in look at some very creative food photography photographs. You should come and join in, and if you want to ask him any question, you're very welcome to do so as well. We're looking forward to that.
Jimmy, have you put his website link in the description?
I will do that. I will do that later. I
strongly recommend people go and look, because he does a bunch of stuff, but his food photography, I've been looking at it today, is spectacular. It's art. It's not just food.
Yeah, it is art.
So have a look.
Yes. So remember to check out his detail. I'm going to put in the description after we enter this chat, because I need some time to put the web link in it. And but once you do that, you can actually check out his website, check out his work, and we're going to come back and talk to him live next week. So that should be an interesting thing to do. So we're going to keep on doing this from different photographer, different style. Could be one day could be street photographer, one day could be a landscape, one day could be black and white photographer, maybe another one would be an analog only photographer. I know it's kind of like a thing these days, so maybe he'll inspire some people instead of thinking about raw. Look, these people only have film to develop. There's no other changes there. Once they're taking a shot and that's it. So we can talk a little bit about analog photography as well. So if you guys are into that, remember to stay tuned for next week's episode. So thank you very much for joining us, and I hope you guys all have a good day, and I will see you all very soon. Okay, so thanks a lot, Rod. I'll see you next time.